Let's face it, business technology is frustrating and complex. So how do you make sure it works for your team? To make IT right, start the discussion at go-domain.com. You're listening to Discussions by Domain, a podcast for business leaders. Our discussions may be with people you've probably heard of before, but the majority of our guests are in the trenches, professionals like you and I, with the same challenges and struggles of keeping up in the Northeast. They're implementing strategies, overcoming hurdles. They're leading the fastest growing businesses in our region. My name is Anthony DeGraw, Director of Partnerships at Domain Computer Services, and the host of this show. When I'm not talking with business leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of Domain and the ups and downs of our own growth journey, as we intend to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome to another episode of Discussions by Domain. I am your host, Anthony DeGraw, Director of Partnerships at Domain Computer Services. Today we have Rashaad Bajwa, President and CEO of Domain Computer Services, back on. I think he's like number 4 or 5 in terms of episodes now that he's been on. So definitely our number one guest. Rashaad, welcome back.
Awesome. Well, Anthony, thanks for having me.
So today we wanted to go over kind of the CEO founder story of Domain Computer Services. And for everybody that's been listening to the podcast and watching our blog posts and our social media, they've seen a lot over the last 6 months. And it wasn't all pandemic related. There was a lot of things going on with Domain Computer Services and Tier 1 technology partners. So Rashaad, maybe you want to start us off of kind of the origin story of Domain and how we got to 2020, and then we'll get into what we did in 2020.
Awesome. No, that'd be great. So, and it goes back to 1997. So both me and Michelle Bajwa, who's a partner in Domain, as well as my wife. And in 1997, she was not my wife. We were together, but we were not married at the time because we were seniors at Rutgers. And the plan for both of us had been that we were going to go to law school. So that kind of explains, by the way, people know I'm in technology right now, but when I tell them I'm a philosophy and political science major, it's like, what? How does that make any sense? Maybe even worse, Michelle is an English and political science major. So when I tell them our plan was to go to law school, it's like, okay, that makes more sense. So what happened was we were going to go to law school, and Michelle did what you normally should do when you're going to go to law school. She got a job in a law firm.
There you go.
But she was very good at it was basically paralegal work, and she was helping them with technology as well because she just was technologically proficient, probably one of the youngest people in the office at the time. And computers were just coming on the scene back in 1997 in small businesses. I also was very proficient in technology, even though I was a political science and philosophy major. In college I was into gaming, and I'd put together my computers, and a buddy of mine got me an internship in technology. So it started with an internship, and that's why Apprentice IT, which we can talk about at a different time, our apprenticeship for IT right now is so personal and close to me because that's how I got my start. But to make a very, very long story short, I had an apprenticeship or an internship in IT. She was in a law firm. I got a speeding ticket. And I was complaining about it once. And so we're both at Rutgers in New Brunswick. My job was down in Princeton. And going up and down Route 1, I got a speeding ticket. And I was complaining about it to Michelle at her office one day. And the lawyers there said, "Oh, I know the prosecutor or judge or something like that in that town. We can like Michelle tells us you're like a computer whiz kid. And so maybe we can I'm sure you can help us with something." I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, I got something for you. There's this new thing called the internet." And back then, internet for everyone back then was like an AOL CD or CompuServe CD, and they didn't even call it the internet. And so I'm going to get you guys connected to the internet, but that requires creating a network. So I came in over the weekend, drill, in their office, ran cable, connected all the computers, got them all connected to one modem, because back then you didn't have DSL or cable modems or Fios or none of that. Got them connected to one cable modem. And through this cable modem, they were able to share files, which was mind blowing to them. They used to pass around floppy disks and do legal research on the internet, because things like Westlaw and LexisNexis they had some aspect of that even back then. So, and before they used to have to pass around these CDs from computer to computer, not even DVDs, CDs.
Yeah.
And so their mind was like, this is amazing. I'm sure they felt like they got the good side of that deal, because now they have to represent me for some small little thing, but their office had literally been revolutionized. And Michelle was no slacker in this at all. When I created the network, she then ran with it. She created legal case, or not created, she implemented legal case management software for them. So the whole concept of leveraging technology to help a business improve their workflow, their efficiency, their profitability, it all kind of started way back when, and we're still seniors at Rutgers. And once again, not to make this too long a story, by the time my court case came up, the prosecutor in North Brunswick Township was already my client too. and the reason why is because these first attorneys had like bragged about it to some other attorney, and then they came, and I only had one speeding ticket. So I figured out how to put together a proposal, and kept referring more and more and more. And that's a big part of why, I even say to this day, reputation is your wealth, because frankly, everything we have, it was built on reputation, doing good work for people, making a good impression, following through with your promises. And so that brought us, we did that for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I was going to say from what was it, 97 to about 2012, you guys hustled, right? You're bringing on people, doing as much as you could, running a business, employees and whatnot. But then from what I understand, there's a pivotal move that you made in 2012. What was that?
Yeah, exactly. So in 2012, I'm in my mid 30s now, right? Yeah, or then, not now. Now I'm in my mid 40s, but I was in my mid 30s, and I had kind of gotten bored. I mean, Domain had grown, not huge. I think we had maybe 12 employees, but it was a great lifestyle business. Meaning we were making good money. We were felt very successful, but also I got a little bit bored. And so the thought was, do we sell the company? That didn't feel right to me. Do we grow it? Do we scale it? And that's what we did. So I decided I'm going to hire my first salesperson. So I went out and I got my first Anthony DeGraw. Only I wasn't quite as lucky back then to get Anthony DeGraw, but frankly, the first salesperson that we got was not that successful, but it was mostly my fault. And it's because I had not learned how to create a sales system. I basically told them, imitate me, and that I was setting them up for failure because they didn't have my experience in technology. So that prompted me to join a peer group, and it was known as HTG peer groups back then. And because I wanted to learn how to develop a salesperson, I wanted to learn how to develop salespeople and to have a sales team and then grow and scale the business, because that's how I was going to remain engaged. And that is where we met Dave Schaefer and Jim Cares from Tier 1 Technology Partners back in 2012. So there were so many benefits from us deciding for the first time that we don't have all the answers. I'm not just like super smart tech entrepreneur, Rashaad. Look what I've accomplished. Most businesses fail, and we started this in college. Look how smart we are. I was pretty full of myself. I'm still pretty full of myself, but then it was sufficiently so that I didn't think I needed help from others. And that was the biggest realization, understanding that no matter how many talents I had, there was so much to learn. There were so many mistakes that I had made that I could learn from other people's mistakes as well. And that pure relationship introduced us not only to Dave Schaefer, where we then later on built on that relationship, but allowed us to build and scale Domain so that it doubled and tripled in size over the next couple of years, and then brought us to 2020.
So before we get into 2020 and what happened this year, there's two items I want to touch on. One of them has to do with HTG peer groups, which is IT Nation Evolve now. And it has to do around this concept of best in class, and then how they apply that concept to KPIs or key performance indicators across the whole business. So I just want to get your insights on that, because one thing that resonated with me when you talk about this personally to me is the need for competition. And you and I both strive on that, but I think it was instrumental to our business and where we got to. So maybe just give it a little insight on KPIs, best in class, and what drove you for probably the next, 8 years of success.
Yeah. And I'm going to touch on that from two different parts, or from two different sides. One was relating to putting systems in place. So we didn't really measure much at all going into 2012. It was basically, is the bank account balance going up or is it going down? And then beyond that, it was the sheer will and energy of me as an entrepreneur is what's going to build this business. And that, or I found that works up to a certain level, but then at some point you become the bottleneck to that growth. And so if you want to be able to then expand beyond that, you got to develop people. You got to develop people, but when you develop people, you got to have some ruler by which you tell them what success looks like. And so one of the other big benefits that we found by joining this peer group was we got exposed to metrics, identifying, number one, finding out which metrics matter, which ones we should be tracking, and then what does good look like? And so part of the benchmarking that we got, we found out, so we started kind of managing our books to these common sets of benchmarks, and we realized we were best in class. Like, we never knew we were best in class. We had a sense we were good because the bank account balance was going up more than it was going down. But this allowed us to now track our performance in a whole bunch of different criteria. And then to your point, if you're a competitive person, it's one thing to just have a kind of a fundamental broad sense of what good looks like. But if you then get the calculus behind all of the facets that make good, and you go after making all of those good, it really amplifies your ability to scale. And then when you can delegate it to other people and then show them, not only do I want you to be successful and perform, but here's a playbook of metrics that we're going to use to track our business. I think that's really where you can take it to the next level.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's just a very valuable point to get. I think we've talked about this. You see this stoppage for most companies, even in the peer groups, right? It's somewhere around 2 to 3 million in revenue.
And by the way, most of them, like 90+% of them, will never get past this hurdle.
Yeah.
Because they talk about it, they hear about it, but execution is very different than theory.
Exactly. So very pivotal. It doesn't matter if you're an IT service provider, another type of service company, or a product like company.
We see it in our clients.
Yep.
I mean, there's clients of ours that will never get past 15 employees.
Yep.
And it's because they don't put metrics in place. They don't delegate. You have, it's leadership by cult of personality. And we were guilty of that as well. The cult of personality around Rashaad. Everything comes back. All meaningful decisions are Rashaad's. All strategy is Rashaad's. I would do the purchasing because no one else was good at it. I would do the sales because no one else could represent us. I would
Yeah. Yep. So, all right, I want to, the second thing before we get to 2020, which actually ties into 2020 for us, is I want to say 2018, I could be off by a year or two, but we start through our peer groups, we start to see the involvement and the change in our industry of one you would call succession planning for owners like yourself, but number two is kind of exit strategies and how do we want to exit, and the marketplace, what was going on with businesses, and the change of managed service providers from an hourly type of engagement to a more monthly recurring revenue engagement, which brought some excitement to our industry. So wanted to see if you could give us kind of the lay of the land, the audience, the lay of the land around what was going on in that time frame, and then starting to craft the way you thought about the future of Domain.
Yeah. So, starting back in 1997, we were very, very early on this. If you look actually at all managed services providers, IT service providers, it's some weird stat. It's something like 30 or 40% of them were all started in 1997 or 1998, which is weird. Like 2 years should not represent that much of an entire industry. And so, but we were seniors at Rutgers at the time, so we were very young. And so what your point is exactly right. Now in 2018 or so, those folks now have been in the industry for 20 years. They just weren't 20 years old like we were. Most of them were like 40 years old.
Yeah.
So succession planning now is becoming a much bigger thing. The other thing is the maturity of the industry. Even Domain, for those first many, many years, we were just computer guys and gals, going out and fixing problems. Now the computer, it's so much more, it's so layered, it's complex. There's cybersecurity, there's digital marketing. I mean, there's just a lot of things that technology kind of plays a role in, not to mention remote work and telecommuting during COVID. But even before COVID. So a lot of these shifts were happening already. Broadband internet made accessibility so different. And all of those shifts were happening. COVID in 2020 obviously accelerated that, but all of that had been happening. And so in roughly around 2018, 2017, a lot of investors, like the outside world, started realizing, wow, we're putting more and more of our eggs in IT's basket. And these businesses that are responsible for running these, they're becoming more consequential. They're becoming more like a utility. And that industry became more and more mature. And so therefore the investors started getting interested, and the companies like Domain, and Domain is one of the largest IT providers in New Jersey and growing, came more and more on people's radars. So much so that I would get a call or email like 3 times a day saying, would you be interested in selling? Would you be interested in merging? Would you be interested in kind of doing something? And we avoided most of those because we wanted to make sure we protected the customer and employee experience.
So that brings us to 2020. And Rashaad now for 2 years, at least 3 years probably, has been formulating, all right, what's next for Rashaad, Michelle, Dave and Jim at Tier 1 start to have conversations with you, and you start to plan. What is 2019 is a great year for both organizations. What does 2020 look like, and the path for Domain and Tier 1 together? So maybe start with the introduction of Dave and Jim and Tier 1 in that conversation, as well as you guys planning together where you wanted to take these companies.
Sure. So it did start in 2019. The conversations formally with Tier 1. So us and Tier 1, we had been peers and friends starting in 2012 because we had been in the same peer group. Over the years, we switched peer groups. Like we went into another high growth group and then shifted to a large company group. But we still remained in contact, especially since they're only about 2.5 hours away from us in right outside Baltimore. And Dave would bring his folks up to meet us. I had gone down there. But in 2019, when all of this activity, this M&A activity, mergers and acquisitions activity in our marketplace started happening, I knew that we wanted to do something, and we wanted to kind of put our stake in the ground because we were now doing benchmarking and metrics, and we knew we were best in class. Not only were we best in class, but our staff was best in class, and because that's why we are best in class, but our clients were also best in class, meaning we had identified a niche in the market where we would go after, and maybe not even go after necessarily initially, but found ourselves kind of attractive to and attracted to other operationally mature companies, professional services companies that could benefit from the type of people and staff and culture and skill sets that we had. And so we knew we wanted to do something. And I knew that Tier 1 was very similar to that because of all of the exposure that I had had. And so in one of our quarterly meetings, I mentioned to Dave, just jokingly over a meal, what if I bought your company? But we would joke around all the time, and he would ha 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 ha. And those of you who know Dave and me, like I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 6'2", and he dwarfs me. He's like, so he just like smacked me on the back or something. And I'm like, okay, so I don't know if he took it seriously or not. Maybe he just thinks I'm joking. So the next day I call him up and I'm like, do you remember what I said? Like, I was serious. And I'm not saying what if I buy you? Like, what if we get together? What if we work together? And I thought he would blow me off, but he was actually very interested. And the reason why is he also wanted to know what was next for him. He had had a career prior to IT. So for him, he was older and did want to step away at some point, but when is that good time? I don't know that he had planned on it being right now, but he knew it was going to be in the not too distant future. And Jim, his partner, was there and obviously incredibly capable. But would Jim have more assets and resources and capabilities and smart voices in the room if he joined forces with us as opposed to trying to do it himself? So all of these things I think are going on in Dave's mind. So we decided, let's explore this further. And this is in 2019. No one knew what was coming up for us in 2020.
Yeah.
And so we started off by doing some SWOTs, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, analysis on both. So our leadership team went down to Owings Mills. Their leadership team came here. We already kind of had a sense because of the peer relationship of the nature of the businesses, but we wanted to kind of really dig deep. And the more we dug, the more we realized, we had been drinking from that same punch bowl, water cooler, whatever analogy you want to use. And a lot of things were very, very similar. And so if we did decide to go together, it wouldn't be a huge lift. It's obviously always a lift, but it would be very synergistic for both of us. We'd both be able to bring better assets to the table. Our team would get access to a bigger team, which allows for just more opportunity, more growth. And so it started looking quite attractive. And in 2019, we started that process. We gave Dave an LOI, a letter of intent, to merge. And that's kind of what brought us on the doorstep of 2020.
That's awesome. So obviously we walk into 2020, the first 2 months are nothing's really changing. There's a little virus out in China somewhere, and it may be here, it may not be. But then
and we're doing diligence, by the way, at that point.
Yeah.
Tier 1 is doing diligence on Domain. Domain is doing Tier 1 on.
And I think we were even set to close at a certain date. I don't know if it ever got yeah, exactly. So I think the date, if I remember correctly, it was a Sunday. I think it was March 16th. Governor Phil Murphy declared the state of emergency, the lockdown, all of that. And that kind of put I know at least us internally at Domain, you, myself, the management team, kind of on pause. Like, hey, what's going to happen here? What are we going to do? Let's make sure we can maintain. And I know the same thing was going on for them as well. So we had this brief pause, and I remember clear as day. One time you came to me and you were just like, I think it was like 3 months later. It must have been like June, I think, and you were like, "We're good to go. We're gonna do fine. We're gonna be all right." And I don't know what exactly happened there. Maybe it was some PPP or something like that. But I remember I could see a relief in you, to get to the next level. And from there, we decided to go full bore ahead with the merger. So why don't you walk us through maybe that month and when we closed, and then what looked next after we merged and the path forward?
Yeah, so COVID put everything on hold because you got to take care of your own house first. It doesn't matter how appealing and sexy it looks like to kind of do interesting big things, but you got to make sure that your house is in order. And when COVID hit, we didn't know what was going to happen to our clients. And, with hindsight, I would have loved to have told you that we were smart enough to know that we picked clients that were relatively pandemic proof, but we were not. It just worked out that way. We were very fortunate in that most of our clients were in professional services industries, some of which actually did quite well during the pandemic because their services were needed. We knew that our services were needed. March was one of the busiest months ever because we had to shift thousands of end users across all of our clients to working from home. Almost all of them had had some sort of remote work set up before, but it wasn't set up to run their entire office for an extended period of time. We had done that a little bit during Hurricane Sandy. We moved some people in Manhattan for an extended period of time, but not everyone all at once during a couple of weeks. So that was very busy. But our concern was, frankly, can our clients pay us? Because we want to be able to pay our staff. And we very early went out and told our staff, and you may recall this, and we said, look, I want to assure you that one of the benefits of working for a financially healthy company is we have means. They're not endless means, but we have means. So I want to assure everyone that at least and this is before PPP, I want to assure everyone that at least for right now, everyone has a paycheck. And because we got plenty of work to do, and us and our clients need you guys to execute. And so, and I saw the look of relief on many folks' faces. What I didn't say at that time, but I think was maybe implied was, that can't go on forever.
Yeah.
There is a point at which that ends. And luckily our clients were able to pay us for the most part. We did have extensive terms for some. PPP obviously came in, and that just gave an additional level of comfort. But the biggest thing was just sitting back and realizing, wow, a lot of clients now are realizing for the first time how meaningful and significant their investment in IT up until this point and then now is to the health and well-being of their business, and how indispensable we are to them. And so I kind of intellectually then knew we're not going anywhere. Yeah. Not only are we not going anywhere, we're going to be more significant going forward. And so to seal the deal with our partners down in Owings Mills and Tier 1 not only is okay and not risky, it is a bold move that will move us forward in kind of executing on this strategy that was there all along, which was bring two best-in-class MSPs together and then go out and find the other ones and bring them on board as well. So we merged in July, kind of fulfill that process. During the entire thing, there's a whole bunch of private equity firms who were kind of talking to us and wanting to. We found a great partner with Frontenac in Chicago that kind of, we knew they were our people. They had the same values. They wrote a core value statement that was almost identical to the one that we came up with. Focused on people, really important to be focused on people. This isn't just about widgets and Excel spreadsheets. And then we got their investment on September 30th as a merged entity. And now we are on a roll, looking for other folks like us to help kind of come into the fold and build one of the first or the first national premium MSP platforms.
Love it. So let's talk about the future. Let's talk about what we're building from three different angles. Let's start with our employees. What does the future like? What was the merger and the investment look like to our employees? What does it provide them? What does it give them access to?
Right. And this was one of the most exciting parts for me, which was you can't be a people-focused business and this just be, oh, Rashaad and Dave got a check and then sail off into the sunset. It can't be that. If that is how we're going to be seen after building the company for 23 years, that's not the legacy that we want to have. So one of the most exciting things was we had an opportunity for long-term employees who had been with us for a while to give them equity in the company. So that number one, right out of the gate, was an awesome way for us to share with the team that had brought us here that you have some skin in the game. What you've been doing has been noticed and noted, and that's the way the world should work. What your reputation is and what you've done in the past will bring you rewards. And now going forward, my goodness, the opportunity is ridiculous. So once again, we've gotten our private equity partner to agree with us that a full 10% of the equity in this go forward MSP platform is going to be shared with staff, which is pretty cool. Not like they got to buy in, but they get it just as part of their work. Obviously as we go forward. But then career opportunity. One of the saddest things when leading people and working with people and mentoring people is realizing that you might have hit the end of what you can give them. And you need to let them fly. And when you're a 30-person, 40-person, 50-person company, there's some point at which their people's capacity and capability has now kind of gotten to look, unless I die or leave, there's really not much more I can either pay them or give them responsibility. But the beauty with this go forward plan that we have is we're going to be double, triple, quadruple, 10 times the size that we are in fairly rapid format. And we have always promoted from within if we can, as long as the skill set is there. So that ceiling that people may have had literally just shot through the sky. I mean, look at you. I'm so pumped for you in that if we had remained a certain size company, there would have been a point at which you would have been like, look at these other big companies. If I want to do big things, I got to go there. But now, hopefully, we've created a world where you feel like you can do real meaningful, substantive, big things underneath a bigger tent that we're putting together.
Exactly. Now let's switch over to our customers and who we serve every single day. What are the, I want to call it added capabilities that this allows us to do for them?
Yeah. So I don't know if it's a well-kept secret or it's a poorly kept secret, but what we do is complicated, and it's only getting more complicated. I remember about 10 years ago when the cloud first came out, people would come and they're like, aren't you terrified? Like, this is the end of your industry. Everything's going to go to the cloud and you're not going to need IT anymore. So, and you know, I didn't know how to get into a debate with them back then, but what we have seen is the cloud, if anything, is complicated things, because now your data is not just on one box in your office, it's in like 50 boxes spread over 100 geographies with 5 different apps, and they all got to talk to each other, and cyber, all of that sort of stuff. So the reality is it has become so much more complex, and keeping up with that, the skill sets that you need in particular in cybersecurity, but now frankly, digital marketing, you know, digital marketing and sales management. You know how many software tools are involved in executing on revenue generation for our clients? So us needing to get up to speed on CRMs and ERPs and billing platforms is more and more complicated. And there's only so much you can do by organically growing that talent base yourself. And so one of the things I love about this strategy is we get access to more talent, to a diverse talent pool of, you know, you can only know so much in a certain body of people and brains. And when you get more of that talent there, we can just provide a better outcome for our clients. Like we're already a relatively big company with a great skill set and certifications. So rarely did it come up where we would say, sorry, we haven't seen that before, and we'd have to reach out. Now that will happen never or very infrequently. And as we scale, we're the ones that everyone comes to for answers.
Love it. And then the final piece of this, which is the newest piece, is as we build out this platform, not only are we going to do it organically, but we're also going to do it through other mergers and acquisitions from providers like us, other managed service IT providers like us that want to join a best-in-class premium partner. What is the options for them? What is the insight for them on why join a domain platform and go forward with us? Kind of the same as we're better, stronger together than apart.
Yeah, and I don't think it's much different than the argument that applies to tier one or that applied to domain in getting together with each other. Definitively, we are stronger together. Our capabilities, our skill sets, but similar to the benefit that we got from the peer groups, there's more wisdom when you share your wisdom. You know, 1 + 1 in some areas equals 2, but in wisdom it equals like 5. And by having more, and the wisdom can be in cybersecurity, it can be in infrastructure, it could be just in culture. Yeah. And employee engagement. It could be in customer satisfaction. It could be in sales process. But the reality is this: we're getting better in all of these areas, and you can either try to do it yourself, like Domain did for 23 years, Tier 1 did for 22 years, be convinced that you're going to have all the good ideas yourself, or you can kind of go in with somebody else that is aligned with you on your values and hopefully your vision and your mission, because then you will be stronger together and there will be a much bigger, you know, whatever it is at the end of the journey that you're looking for, whether it's money, whether it's impact, whether it's improving the quality of life for your staff or improving the quality of product for your clients. I think all of the above. People would be, and this is why the investors were so interested in getting into our space, we're incredibly fragmented. Domain wasn't that big in kind of big company standards, but we were huge when it came to IT providers, and we're only getting bigger. And so for a small IT shop to keep up with those level of assets and capabilities and 24/7 and certifications and the cybersecurity expertise, to try to keep it all in-house and just do it yourself and try to acquire that talent using, and then compete against us for that talent. Why would that talent want to work with you where, in 5 years, they're going to hit their glass ceiling, when with us, there's going to be a bigger trajectory. I saw that myself and wanted that for domain staff and clients. Dave and Jim wanted that for tier one. And I think there's going to be others who are going to say, look, as long as these are good people who are aligned with us on their core values and mission and vision, we're going to be better off together.
Amazing. So Rashaad, I want to thank you for coming on, sharing not only the origin story, the founder story, but also the path forward for our employees, our customers, and other partners we bring on this platform. When this goes live, it'll be after the date which we announce our new name, our new brand. So Domain Technology Partners, which I was fumbling with the computer services for a while there. But as you know, Domain Computer Services, you have tier one technology partners out of Owings Mills. We're coming together, we're bringing those brands together, and the new name, new logo, everything goes live on Monday, January 11th, and it will be Domain Technology Partners. Any final words or wisdom for our audience and what you think of the brand there?
Frankly, it is amazing. We had always kind of been tormented with the computer services name because we always thought we were so much more than that. And I think Domain Technology Partners encapsulates that perfectly.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, Rashaad Bajwa, President and CEO of Domain Technology Partners. Thanks, Rashaad.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.
To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. This guarantees that every episode will get delivered directly to your device. To help us get the word out, share with a friend, leave a review, and check out our discussions on the web at go-domain.com/podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.